Welcome, fellow anglers, to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I am Captain Ryan Van Fleet, your host here in the Florida Keys. Each week, I bring you fishing tips, stories, gear reviews, and more to help you maximize your fishing trip, catch big fish, and overall have fun. All right, Good Karma listeners, this is a more technical podcast built for those folks who are serious and want to pick up some new tricks. Now, I go deep on some techniques and tools I use for running baits deep when I power drift. Power drifting is just another term for slow trolling between live baits between 1 and 2 miles an hour. You get the drift. So definitely I want you guys to take a look at the show notes, and you may want to listen to this a few times to get some of it down. Enjoy. Now, last winter, I was on a hot bite of Wahoo, Sailfish, and tunas. I was marking fish 50 feet deep. So I just check out the image of what I was seeing in the show notes. It was a cold day in February. I think the water temperature was 73 degrees. Now, my rule of thumb is that I put away the trolling rods on these cold days and focus more on using live bait, slowing the. In other words, I slow my roll. There's just a lot of live bait around this year, and I'm trying to match the hatch. So in other words, I like the live bait in the wintertime for more than trolling for wahoos and tunas when the water temperature, gets down into the low 70s. Now, I'm looking for big fish on these days with my favorite live bait, the goggle eye. I was, like I said, I was marking the fish below the surface about, 50 feet down. You can refer to the picture. Now, the surface baits on this particular trip were going untouched, and the boats around me weren't seeing any bites from the sailfish on the surface. We had a north wind, and I only had one downrigger with me that day, but I had intentions of going deep dropping later in the day when the wind dropped out, and it was predicted to get flat. So I brought along my electric reel. Now, I use a Tanacom bowl, deep drop reel matched with a custom adrenaline bent butt rod. And, I wanted to get another bait down deep, but I didn't have another downrigger. So, guys, I hate using sinkers attached with breakaway weights and rubber bands. For me, it doesn't work. I've just had too many issues. It's crazy, but I had something really kind of strange and something bad actually happened a few years ago with a good client, Dr. Tim from Missouri. We scored a nice wahoo earlier in the day on the inline sinker attached to rubber band, no problem. The next fish that we hooked was a wahoo. He was pushing 80 pounds. The fish jumped. It actually looked like a blue marlin in the distance. It was big. That fish was huge. But what happened next was, kind of freaky, and the rubber band actually didn't break away. The sinker was rocketed in the air like a missile, and we ended up losing the fish because you absolutely need to keep the line tight on a big wahoo, especially when you're using small hooks. And not to mention you got light drag, and it's just, guys, it just is very challenging. So for me, it's nearly impossible to keep a fish tight while live baiting for wahoo using a 10-ounce inline sinker or whatever. Now, that was the last day I ever used an inline sinker attached to a lead with a rubber band while live bait fishing for wahoo and kingfish. I only use downriggers now, or I use my deep drop rod. When I say deep drop rod, that's my bent butt rod with a Tanacom bowl to get the baits deep. Now, keep in mind, you don't need an electric reel setup for what I'm going to talk about. You can also use your 50 wide or 80 wide 2-speed reel that you use for deep dropping. So I know most guys out there right now have a that are serious are serious about targeting wahoo, have this setup with a bent butt. So just apply what I'm going to talk about to this to your to the reel that you use for wahoo fishing, and then just convert it over to a downrigger setup for slow trolling live bait steep. So like I mentioned earlier, I use a Tanacom bowl 1000 electric reel Now, you can purchase one online. I bought mine from Bass Pro Shops a couple years back for like $500. I have it loaded with 40-pound Power Pro braided line. Yes, 40-pound. Like I said in my previous podcast, I like 40-pound braided line. The Tadacon Bull has been a good electric reel for me over the years, but I'm going to be upgrading this year as I have bigger fish on my agenda. Now, this reel is attached to a 6-foot custom-built ultralight adrenaline custom-built rod, which is a bent butt rod with a swivel tip with roller guides. This rod was custom-built for my applications. It's built to absorb the shock of the fish at the tip and keep from pulling hooks while spinning up big queen snappers and snowy groupers from the depths. Okay, so my setup. First, I make a spider hitch out of the braid. I like the spider hitch as it's a pretty good shock absorber, and by doubling the braid, it doubles the strength of the braided line. Next, I attach a 300-pound test ball bearing swivel to the spider hitch using an offshore swivel knot. Now, see the show notes for the instructions on how to tie the offshore swivel knot. Now, I highly recommend using ball bearing swivels in all deep drop applications. Now, ball bearing swivels are going to help you prevent line twists. To the 300-pound ball bearing swivel, I attach a number 378 Sure Stop probe by Scotty. Now, attached to this snubber swivel is a Pearl Troll light tension release clip that I'll talk about here a little later. Now, you can purchase a number 378 Sure Stop Pro snubber for downriggers online, and I buy mine from fishusa.com for $19.99. Now, you can make your own if you're feeling ambitious, but I really like, and I used to do that, so I don't do it anymore because I don't have time, and I found something that works really good, which are the Sure Stop Pros. So for a weight, it varies. On my electric downriggers, when I refer to electric downriggers, I'm referring to my Canon electric downriggers, which are my main setup. On those setups, I use 10-pound cannonballs. Now, the 10-pound cannonballs cost between, I think they cost around $50. And I pick them up at West Marine as I need them. Now, when it comes to the electric reel on the bent butt setup, I use lighter weights, obviously. I use anywhere between a pound to 5 pounds of lead. Just depends on the current and all that stuff. So conditions will dictate the size of the lead that I use. Now, I'm not really concerned about dialing in on a particular depth when I use this Tadacon Bull setup as a downrigger. I just want to get the bait deep. So a lot of guys in South Florida, they don't like to use downriggers, but I'm seeing more and more of them lately, which is very cool because they are very effective. And it's not really the part of the standard guide program in the Keys to use a downrigger. Now, I grew up fishing downriggers, and I was taught from a young age on how to fish them efficiently, and I've learned a lot of tricks over the years. So when you charter with me, you see how quickly I move when it comes to getting a bait deep. So it's just automatic. With that being said, the trick to setting them is, getting them set up efficiently, like my release clip setup. Now, I leave the lead ball in the water at all times when setting and resetting the bait. I use a long release leader that attaches to a Troll master release light tension clip that I've set up to use on downriggers. It's made by Penn. They cost like $11.99, and there's a link in the show notes to where I buy them from. Now, this long release leader allows me to attach the bait to the clip inside the boat rather than bringing in the lead ball. And this saves a ton of time and protects your boat from the ball. Now, I'm going to post up a photo of my setup in the show notes, so you can take a look at it. On tough days, this bait will, on some days, it actually produces more than my downrigger. Prior to attaching, I don't know why, but prior to attaching it to the downrigger, I set the bait back about 200 to 300 feet yes, 200 to 300 feet before setting it into the depths. Now, on calm days, when there's a lot of boat activity, fish get spooky. So especially kingfish. Now, this is my long. I call this my long deep bait. Now, hookups can be tricky when you're putting a bait back 200 feet and putting it down deep. But when a fish strikes, I go over this with a client. I tell them that when a fish strikes, I'm going to throttle up the engine, get the bow out of the line. Now, my rods are specifically designed for this type of fishing with flex tips. You have to have custom rods built if you plan on really dialing in on downrigger fishing. And I would highly recommend that you buy the absolute best 2-speed reel with a high rate of retrieve. This is going to get that slack back really quick. I've seen, essentially when there's a lot of, let's just put it like this, there's a lot of line in the water and you need to get tight as quick as you can and stay tight. I learned this when I got into targeting big wahoo, and it took losing a few over the years to gain this knowledge. So just saved you some time. Lightweight tackle and rods are essential for this type of fishing. Now, you're going to lose big fish if you're using trolling rods for this application. Granted, you're going to catch a few, but I guarantee you will you'll catch more with a custom-built rod that is designed for catching big wahoo and kingfish on downriggers using live bait. Now, just keep in mind you're using light wire, small hooks, and baby treble hooks. And some of the biggest wahoo I've caught have been up to 60, 70 pounds, have been on a number 4 Eagle Claw small treble hook in the corner of the mouth using my cable tie setup. So I mentioned earlier that my favorite bait is the live goggle eye, but I do like to use smaller baits for targeting tunas and kingfish and wahoo as well. So, but that being said, my second favorite bait to use is the pilchard on the downrigger. Now, I feel that pilchards run better on this lighter electric reel setup using a lighter weight. So I get a lot of bites on this setup using pilchards. It's pretty crazy, but it's the truth. I've seen wahoo eat big pilchards in between tides when it's supposed to be slow. I call a giant pilchard a midday snack between major feeding times for wahoo. And this also goes for other pelagic fish. The pilchard always seems to, get a fish fired up. Now, it's very, very easy to set this downrigger, this electric reel downrigger, or if you're using a 50 or 80 wide setup. So what I do is first I set the bait back 200 to 300 feet. Yes, that far back, because I feel that if you're like fishing, for example, conch reef on a Saturday with 1,000 boats during the wintertime, and the fish are all like ganged into one corner by a little conch reef, and you got everybody fighting for position, the fish do get a little spooky, guys, if it's not a major push of fish coming through. So I found that if I'm setting a bait back deep, that I'm getting a lot more bites in high traffic. So anyways, it's working for me. Now, once the bait is set back 200 to 300 feet, I throttle the boat up, move forward, and set the baits to the depth that I wish to fish as I'm moving the boat forward at a very slow rate of speed, maybe a half knot or a little more. Now, this just helps get the bait set quickly so we can get the fishing. Now, when a fish strikes, hit the button of the electric reel. It's basically when the fish strikes, it pulls the line out of the release clip. You hit the button of your electric reel. It brings the lead out of the water, and then fight the fish free from the lead. Now, make sure you get the weight out of the water. That's very critical. Don't bring a fish to the boat with your weight dangling over the side of the boat. You're asking for problems. It can be a little chaotic at times when you downrigger fish, but the 5 seconds of chaos is worth it, in my opinion. And man, do I love the adrenaline rush when I smoke a big fish off that electric reel downrigger. It's way cool. Now check out my show notes for a complete setup of my downrigger. Now eventually I'm going to be adding some video tutorials to my show notes, so check back on the show notes frequently and watch for updates. I'm really working on adding more detail to the show notes this year, and then on, just current, not just the current podcast, but previous podcasts. So go back and check out, look for additions. I'll try to update you guys on which ones, but sometimes I forget. Just got a lot going on. Now, one thing about using an electric reel for a lightweight downrigger fishing is it can also be used as a deep drop reel. So you got 2 for 1. That means less stuff you got to carry. So there you go. But this little tip will help you. But it's going to help you out and get you more fish this winter. Now check out the 2 Wahoo I smoked last season using this setup in the show notes off the bait ball that I put up in the show notes as well. It just so happened I took this picture of the bait ball right before I hooked up, so it just worked out that way, which is cool, which is why I posted it. Good luck with this setup, and catch them up, guys. Now, thanks for listening, and as always, please let me know if you have any questions. You can email me at goodkarmaryan@gmail.com. I'm going to be doing a question and answer podcast, so definitely email me. You can also find me on Facebook at Good Karma Fishing Charters, Instagram at Good Karma Sport Fishing _FL_Keys. Now, please also share this podcast with a fellow angler and check out my website, goodkarmasportfishing.com, and sign up for my monthly newsletter and the free fishing tips. I aim to provide you with fishing tips and information so you can make the best out of your time fishing. Thanks for listening, and remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.